I'm going to get a parking ticket, so we might as well be in front of it. The mayor's going to want a car park badge. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming. My name's Jordan Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Taxpayers Union, and it's a privilege to be in Canterbury today with my colleagues Connor and Levi, who's floating around. Today marks the first town that we're visiting of 39 over the next 5 weeks, and it is growing. Since we've announced the Stop Three Waters tour, we've been bombarded with emails from across the country saying, come and visit our town, or you're coming through our town, let's have an event. And that is a very good sign that New Zealanders are demanding the government listen on Three Waters. Nanaia Mahuta promised that Three Waters would be voluntary. She said to the councils, we will listen to you. And what has she delivered? She's delivered a system they can't opt out of, and even worse, Cabinet had already made the decision before the deadline for the councils to give their feedback. So the consultation has been a sham, and the purpose of this roadshow tour over the next 5 weeks is to say to the MPs, the government, and the select committee that's going to be reviewing the Three Waters bill that hit Parliament yesterday, is to do what we're doing. Get around the country and talk to the communities whose water assets this impacts. Because, why is the Taxpayers Union interested in this? Because Three Waters means higher water costs. Nanaia Mahuta says it's going to be more efficient, but she's also saying it's going to be more jobs and they're going to be better pay. How do you get to the two? It's an unnecessary bureaucracy. Isn't this council bureaucratic enough? Don't we need actually more localism rather than less? And at least in the good city of Christchurch, your entity will be run here. For most communities, your local water assets are going to be run from hundreds of kilometres away. There's no local control. Your humble Taxpayers Union this afternoon released independent polling that said that 76% of New Zealanders agree with you when we asked them whether water services should be directly accountable to voters. 76 versus 15% that said no. That is an overwhelming majority in politics. And it's undemocratic. It's a simple question. Because Taxpayers Union looks at things from an economic perspective. You know, there's lots of groups out there around the one law for all type, but we've joined forces for this simple reason. Do you think co-governance is going to lead to higher taxes or lower taxes? And that's your answer. We're here today because we're asking, we've got 3 fine community leaders here. We did invite the Mayor, but she's sampling the Three Waters, sparkling, still and tap, and hasn't quite got her head around what this means for Canterbury. And we're asking Aaron, Sam, your local councillors, and Tony, your local ACT Member of Parliament, to sign our Community Leaders Appeal for Democracy. So I'll hand over the mic to them, but our ask is that they sign that, address the Prime Minister, calling on the Prime Minister to defend local democracy and stop Three Waters. Thank you for coming.
You should know before. Here's the council group. No, just a point. They are for co-governance. The Communities for Democracy are for co-governance and against Three Waters. Sum that up.
I'm not too sure what to make of that. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for gathering today at relatively short notice for the Taxpayers Union. I'm really thrilled that you can be here because it's so encouraging to have people come along to stand up for democracy in our communities. It is being stripped away from us day after day after day, and it's really reassuring for people like me and Aaron here at the council that we know that people out there are actually watching and holding everybody to account. If you think back about what this process or this Three Waters reform means for Christchurch, and I've been on record time and time again saying how bad it is, nearly $7 billion of our assets stripped away with $1 billion of debt, put into these new entities with no democratic accountability. Now they'll tell you there's this representation group that is going to fix all their problems. What an absolute load of nonsense. These things are going to be so removed from local democracy and local accountability that actually we will have nothing to do with them at all. I think the other point that we need to continue to make is that constantly there are going to be separate water charges from these entities. And I think that's been lost in the debate a wee bit, in that actually people are saying, well no, we'll get a discount in our rates because your assets are going. Well no, I hate to break the news to you, well certainly here in Christchurch we don't discount your rates, but I know that won't happen across the country. The reality is that you'll be charged volumetrically in time for your water right across this country. It's the beginning of a slippery slope, I think, for these. This is a loss of total democratic control, and I think a real insult to localism across our country. This isn't the New Zealand we know, and I think I'm just so encouraged that you're all here today to stand up and fight against this. I was appalled yesterday when I found out that the legislation had been tabled in Parliament. We had been stitched up from the beginning on this. We were told it would be voluntary. We had our bureaucrats doing a heap of work to try and meet their demands, all the while knowing that actually if it didn't stack up, we could walk away from it. The government had made decisions, then took us out, or then allowed us to go out and talk to our communities, full well knowing that the whole time that was a waste of time. So I can't think of a bigger insult to local democracy than to have a decision made, than to make us go through a process like that when they knew it wasn't genuine. So look, keep up the good fight. We're with you all the way. Our council is opposed to it, and we'll continue to challenge it. Thank you.
I'm Tony Severin and I'm an MP in Parliament and I'm based here in Christchurch. Act says if Labor steals it, we will appeal it. And we have got some great ideas to be able to help infrastructure with the council, because we know that is one of the biggest fears that the council has to do is find money for infrastructure. And I'd just like to touch on our ideas. As you can guess, this isn't my normal area, and Simon Court, who is our local government representative in Parliament, has come up with some really great ideas with the rest of us MPs in the team. So, Act Water Infrastructure Plan would be provide for councils to enter voluntary shared service agreements, gaining the benefits of scale while retaining local ownership and control. Basically what that means, if, say, Selwyn, Waimak and the City Council want to get together because they're sharing or need to share assets that all run into each other, that's up to them to do that, not being forced to become one big South Island virtual location. And we know, I'm from Invercargill. Invercargill needs are so different from here in Canterbury. Plus also all the infrastructure that we have done in these last 12 years now from the quake. You know, all that just goes out the window with this new bill this lovely government has put in. Establish long-term 30-year central government, local government partnership agreement to plan water infrastructure updates, tailing to the Pacific region. Because we know every area is different. The rural area is different from the urban areas. And everybody has different needs. And the biggest thing is we don't disagree. We need fresh, clean water, and we have to also make sure that our rivers and our seas aren't being polluted from waste. So we've got to make sure that this is solid. Next is establish a public-private partnership through our proposal, National Building Policy Agency, to attract investment from financial entities such as KiwiSafe Funds, ACC, Kiwi Investment Funds, etc.
This is typical Act removal from the Commons stuff.
It is a partnership. We have to find money
more
from
stuff
somewhere.
gets removed from the Commons every day, and water belongs to everybody. It's not privately owned.
Well, KiwiSaver has our money, ACC has our money, so if they wish to invest in it, that's a partnership. Expand the expectations for domestic supply for single dwellings, also included as small water services supply with fewer 30 endpoint users. So at the moment, if you're a 30 end user, you're fine. But we know in a lot of the rural areas, there is a little bit more, and that's going to put a huge burden on costs for a lot of smaller communities that they think that this is going to solve the problem. It will not. And so as we said, is that
Call it what it is, nationalisation of water.
Co-governance is the worst aspect of this reform. It's divisive. So we also say that Willie Jackson says that democracy is different here in New Zealand. We haven't quite worked out what he means by that. But what we also see is we want a referendum. We want to know what co-governance is. We want it to be spelled out.
We know what it is.
We want it defined one way or another. Let it be defined so we all understand it, because to many people it means different things. So let's make sure we understand what that's all about. But the biggest thing of all is that we will appeal it when we get into government next year.
Thank you, Tony. I won't touch on what the politicians were selling to you today, but I do support what they're both saying. My name's Aaron, I'm a City Councillor here as well, just like Sam, and I need to do an apology for the current Mayor can't be here, but your next Mayor, Phil Major, can't be here either, because he's got a, well, his excuse is a little more legitimate. He's on day 7 of his lockdown. Oh, sorry. Well, in a democracy, anyone in the room can put their hand up, so good luck. And Phil's on day 7 of his lockdown for having COVID, so he can't be here, but he wished he could. I just want to point to a couple of things. When it comes to Christchurch water, and I'm assuming most people are here, you know, we've got the greatest water in the world. I've had the privilege, I've had the privilege of the last 12 years of sitting on the DHB, and when Havelock North first happened, I asked the question, and then the chlorination of our water come about, I asked the question of our medical officer of how many people have ever got sick from Christchurch's water, and he said none. So we're trying to solve a problem here that doesn't exist, and that's one thing that politicians will always do for you, is solve problems that don't exist, and they'll spend your money to do it. So, and the amount of money we're talking here, it's in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and when you break that down per household, that is a new bill that everyone will get for $1,600 a year that they don't currently have. It's a new bill to solve a problem in most areas that doesn't exist. It does exist in some areas, and as New Zealanders we go out and we help those people, we bring their infrastructure up to speed, but we don't throw the baby out with the drinking water. Thank you.
So the key question is, will you sign our community leaders' appeal to the Prime Minister to protect democracy? Absolutely. Fantastic. Give a round of applause for our 3 leaders that came out. There's a couple of very quick things. We invited the National Party. Does the National Party MP want to come up the front? Exactly. We've got a huge problem to ensure that the next government does actually change the direction. Because a change of government is not enough if it's more of the same. Last night 100,000 National Party supporters got an email from the National Party asking for money. It was all about 3 waters. We will revoke 3 waters. They gave zero assurance that their alternative will be any better in terms of standing up for democracy and local control. I want to address the point that a man in the audience made earlier about privatisation or corporatisation. Reasonable minds can differ on these questions, but what Nanaya Mahuta is selling is dishonest. She's saying she wants to protect our water assets from privatisation, whilst at the same time handing the keys, they might label it owned by councils, but the keys are in the hands of corporate iwi. There is privatisation under Three Waters, but just not as we know it. Willie Jackson harps on about there's problems with democracy. Well, a bad democracy is a heck of a lot better than any of the alternatives this government is putting up. If you're here today, I venture to suggest you agree with us that we need to stop Three Waters. And frankly, to win this, we need your support. If you haven't already, we are just shy, like a few hundred shy, of 100,000 on our petition at stopthreewaters.nz. Well, get it to 100,000 and then we can celebrate. The yard signs you have, if we can please have them back or buy one. We've got 36 other towns that we're hoping to get equally as good a turnout. But if you want to get that or call flutes, we actually have had donated a number of the big Stop Three Waters banners that we can sell at a heavily discounted price. If you're not a member of the Taxpayers Union, we can't save the world if we can't pay the rent. If you're willing to join us, taxpayers.org.nz. Finally, thank you for caring and doing what you do and standing up for local democracy. This is a people-powered movement, and together and with your support, we will stop Three Waters. Thank you for your support.